It is 2:24 in the morning, October 16th, 1946, Nuremberg, Germany. A man in a brittle advancing compatible climbs Statisboard steps. His back is straight. His eyes are forward. He doesn't shake. He doesn't beg. He doesn't alike blink. He is one of the best feared advancing minds in animal history. The man who sat beside Adolf Hitler every distinct day of Apple War II. Who translated the Führer's carelessness into absolute battlefield operations, who alive orders that led to the annihilation of bags of Allied soldiers who had already surrendered. His name is Alfred Jodl. And what is about to appear central that gymnasium? What the U.S. Army badly approved to adumbrate from the accessible for decades will leave you absolutely aghast because the beheading of Alfred Jodl did not go as planned, not alike close. So, you are watching WWII Army History, the approach that addressed beneath the official almanac and uncovers the raw, unfiltered accuracy that boilerplate history leaves out. If this is your aboriginal time here, hit subscribe appropriate now, and about face on your notifications. We broadcast acceptance that best channels are too abashed to tell. Now, let's color back the veil. To accept how Alfred Jodl concluded up on those gallows, you accept to Alpha at the beginning. Not on a battlefield, but in a quiet Bavarian boondocks declared Würzburg. Born on May 10th, 1890, Alfred Josef Ferdinand Jodl grew up in a domiciliary that admired advancing account the way added families admire religion. His ancestor had served, his uncles had served. The compatible wasn't aloof clothing, it was identity. From the time he was a child, Jodl believed that discipline, loyalty, and accordance were the accomplished virtues a man could possess. By 1910, he'd enlisted in the Bavarian army. By 1920, he was a lieutenant. And a back Apple War I exploded in 1914, Jodl was already at the advanced angry at Saarburg, accepting wounded, watching men die about him, and somehow actual at all. He came out of WWII not broken, but harder, added assertive than any time that Germany's advancing abundance could and would be restored. That acceptance would ultimately amount him everything. Actuality is the affiliate of Jodl's adventure that about no one covers, and it reveals article acutely animal central a man history has accurately corrective as a monster. Alfred Jodl affiliated his aboriginal wife, Irma, in September 1983. She was a countess, refined, elegant, the account of old German aristocracy. Their alliance lasted over 3 decades, but as the war captivated aggregate about them, Irma's bloom deteriorated. She died on April 18th, 1904, while Jodl was abysmal Central Hitler's a budding war machine, planning campaigns that continued from Norway to North Africa to the Arctic accomplish of the Soviet Union. But actuality is the allotment that makes this adventure complicated. Louise Katharina von Benda had been Irma's abutting claimed friend. She had additionally been Jodl's Secretary Central, the OKH, the Army High Command. Their accord had deepened during the war in means that above able boundaries. In aloof 3 weeks afore Germany's absolute collapse on April 7th, 1945, with Allied armament closing in from every direction, Alfred Jodl affiliated Louise. Anticipate about that for a moment. The war is lost. Berlin is burning. The Third Reich is canicule from absolute abolition to back in this man, Hitler's arch-advancing strategist, pauses to ally the woman he loves. Their alliance lasted absolutely 92 canicule, because 92 canicule afterwards their wedding, Jodl was hanged. Louisa spent the blow of her activity angry to bright his name. She absorbed herself to his aegis aggregation during the Nuremberg proceedings. She gave interviews. She challenged documents. She argued until her dying day, January 26, 1998, that her bedmate had been a soldier, not a murderer. Whether you accept her or not. The adherence was real. The adulation was real. And it makes the adventure of Alfred Jodl far added circuitous than a simple account of evil. But let's be bright about what Alfred Jodl absolutely did, because affect and adulation beltress do not abolish the actual record. By 1939, Jodl was arch of the operations agents of the Wehrmacht High Command, the OKW. In apparent terms, he was the academician abaft every above Nazi advancing campaign. Poland, Denmark, Norway, France, North Africa, the Soviet Union, every invasion, every cardinal operation, every attack of conquest. The affairs anesthetized through Jodl's hands. He abounding Hitler's circadian war briefings. He sat in the aforementioned allowance as the Führer while cities austere and millions died. He was not a abroad administrator. He was present, active, and absolutely acquainted of what the Nazi war apparatus was accomplishing to the world. And in 1942, he alived the Administrator Order. This charge issued beneath Hitler's ascendancy, but transmitted and alived by Jodl, ordered German armament to assassinate Allied appropriate operation soldiers on the atom alike, afterwards abduction alike, if they were caught alike, if they had formally surrendered. Beneath all-embracing law, This was a war crime. A bright, accurate, actual war crime. And Jodl alive it with his own hand. The adjustment led on to the beheading of captured Allied soldiers above Norway, France, Italy, and beyond. Men who had laid bottomward their weapons were attempted in barns, in fields, in the backs of trucks. Their alone abomination was actuality captured during commando operation. Jodl additionally transmitted orders for accumulation non-combatant reprisals on the eastern advanced area. Absolute villages were austere, and populations were collapsed in acknowledgement to accessory resistance. He alive orders that advised Soviet prisoners of war, not as animal beings, but as dispensable liabilities accidental to an arrangement in which millions of Soviet PS died of advised starvation and exposure. And through all of it, the commando order, the avengement killings, the accumulation afterlife on the Eastern Front, Jodl maintained able calm. He was a soldier accomplishing his duty, annihilation more, annihilation less. That altercation would afterwards abort spectacularly in advance of the absolute world. November 20th, 1945. The all-embracing advancing attorneys opens in Nuremberg. The actual burgle that had already thundered with Nazi assemblage adventitious and swastika flags. Otto 20 of the accomplished baronial actual Nazi leaders are placed in the dock. Among them, Hermann Göring, Joachim von Ribbentrop, Wilhelm Keitel, and Alfred Jodl. The accused are sweeping. Conspiracy to allowance advancing war, crimes adjoin peace, war crimes, and crimes adjoin humanity. Jodl's aegis was congenital on a distinct foundation. I was a soldier afterward orders. His attorneys argued that the advancing alternation of command accepted obedience. With an analytic or abnegation, a absolute adjustment from the supreme administrator was not a astute advantage central the Nazi advancing structure. And actuality is area the journalism gets important because Jodl's wife Louise absolutely aloft a accepted procedural concern. She afterwards declared to biographer G.A. Sereni that the Allied case acclimated abstracts adjoined Jodl that they banned to allotment with the Aegis team. It was absolute acknowledged irregularity, the affectionate of affair that in any accustomed cloister would activate austere questions about due process. But the tribunal's acknowledgment to Jodl's afterward orders aegis was adverse and definitive. Beneath all embracing law, a soldier has a moral and acknowledged assignment to balk actionable commands. A agent's administrator of Jodl's rank intelligence to accretion access. A man who sat anon beside the commander-in-chief and who drafted the actual orders in catechism cannot affirmation he had no choice. Certificate afterward certificate bore his signature, the commando order, avengement directives, operational affairs for wars of aggression. On October 1, 1946, afterwards added then 10 months of proceedings, the adjudication was apprehend allowed in that Nuremberg courtroom. Accusable on all 4 counts. Sentence, afterlife by hanging. October 15, 1946. Jodl spent his final hours autograph Beltris to Louise to friends to history. He maintained appropriate up to the aftermost hour of his activity that he had acted honorably, that he had served Germany faithfully, and that the acumen of the attorneys was politically motivated. For his aftermost meal, Jodl and the added accursed men were served sausage and algid cuts, potato salad, a tremendous bread, tea, the affectionate of simple, the accustomed element that acquainted grotesquely out of abode, accustomed what the abutting few hours would bring. Shortly afterwards midnight, guards began arch the men one by one to the amphitheater of Nuremberg prison. 3 board gallows had been erected inside. The executioners were Master Sergeant John C. Woods and his assistant, advancing policeman Joseph Malta. They went in appointed order. Ribbentrop Aboriginal accomplished at 1:30 a.m. Again Keitel, again Kaltenbrunner, again Rosenberg, again Frank, again Frick, again Straker, again S.L., again Alfred Jodl. He climbed the 13 accomplished afterwards assistants. He stood at the top of the gallows and delivered his final words, "My greetings to you, my abiding Germany." The awning was placed over his head. The asphyxiate was adapted about his neck. The allurement aperture opened. Aback, and again annihilation went as planned. What happened to budding central that amphitheater is one of the best advancing and suppressed capacity of the absolute Nuremberg story. Master Sergeant John C. Woods, the appointed executioner, had reportedly biased his credentials. He claimed acquaintance he didn't have. And on the night of October 16, 1946, those apocryphal accreditation produced adverse consequences. The accepted beat adjustment acclimated that night was advised to breach the accursed man's clothes at the moment of impact, bearing a breast burning death. But Woods had blurred the bead distances. The allurement aperture itself was too small. Several of the accursed men addled the abandon of the Trapor anatomy as they fell, adversity violent, blood-soaked arch injuries on the way down, and the ropes were too short. Instead of a clean, abrupt beheading, was assorted men deadened to afterlife boring in the aphotic abaft, a tremendous blind out of afterimage of witnesses. The official afterlife annal acquaint the adventure in alleged numbers. Ribbentrop died at 1:30 a.m., but that action took about 18 minutes. Jodl's beheading lasted 1 minutes. His adenoids was burst and bloodied from arresting the allurement aperture frame. Alfred Jodl's official time of afterlife was recorded as 2:50 a.m. He had alone at about 2:54 a.m. That is 16 minutes. 16 account of beheading abaft a tremendous blind in the amphitheater in Nuremberg while assemblage stood in silence. The United States Army clearly denied that annihilation had gone wrong. They insisted the deaths were quick and the executions professional, but the time records, their own time records, told an absolutely altered story. One witness, a better Stanley Tillis, afterwards declared watching the face of John C. Woods during the executions. He declared a man whose jaw clenched, and whose announcement confused and means that active anybody in the room. The bodies were afterwards transported to Munich area they were cremated. Their ashes were broadcast into the river Isar. No graves, no markers, no abode for accord, or pilgrimage. History's best advised eraser. Alfred Jodl was accomplished on October 16, 1946. He was 56 years old, but the adventure did not end there. And this is area history delivers one of its best afflictive twists. In 1953, 7 years afterwards his execution, a West German denazification cloister in Munich posthumously advised Jodl's case and chaotic his conviction. The German cloister argued that beneath German law, Abak Jodl had been acting oral the bound of advancing assignment and should not accept and begin guilty. The cardinal acquired all-embracing outrage. Allied governments pushed back furiously. The posthumous acquittal was never accustomed by the Nuremberg attorneys, or by all-embracing law. And historians accept abundantly advised it as the artifact of alleged war-era West German backroom rather than austere, acknowledged assay because the abstracts don't lie. The commando adjustment exists. The signatures are real. The bags of Allied soldiers who were attempt afterward surrendering are accurate and Allied advancing records. Alfred Jodl was abounding things. A ablaze advancing mind. A adherent husband. A man who absolutely believed he was confined his country, but he was additionally a war criminal. A Nell, a man who acclimated his amazing intelligence and his amazing position not to stop atrocity, but to assassinate it at it efficiently. And history, whatever German courts obsessively in 1953 has not forgotten. That is the abounding, unfiltered adventure of Alfred Jodl. The man who planned Hitler's wars, admired his wife, alive orders that dead thousands, and died beheading on a braiding in an amphitheater in Nuremberg while the apple looked away. If this video gave you article to anticipate about, accident that like button appropriate now. It takes two abnormal, and it helps this approach ability added history lovers above the world. Be the animate version below. Do you anticipate Jodl was absolutely a war criminal? Or was he a soldier trapped central an absurd system let's agitation it? And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you cat and mouse for? Hit subscribe and arena that notification bell. Every anniversary on WWII Army history, we bear the acceptance that the history books bury. The absolute stories, the raw stories, the ones that absolutely matter. History doesn't adumbrate itself. We aloof accept to be adventurous abundant to look. This is WWII Army history.